What's going on, guys? Chris here. Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're talking about the Canon R6 1 year later. Now, I'm currently shooting on it, so just pretend this is the Canon R6. This is actually the Canon RP. I just made a review about that, so card if you ever want to watch that. So the Canon R6, it's been my daily driver for about a year now, and I love it. I think it's a completely underrated camera. It ticks a lot of the boxes that Canon shooters wanted when the EOS R came out, and more so. But it kind of gets overshadowed by its big brother, the Canon R5, which I can understand. The specs on that camera are crazy, but I think that people are really missing out on an amazing, more affordable body, the Canon R6. So let's talk about it. First of all, the body. The body is pretty much identical to the R5. It's very solid in the hand. I do prefer the Canon body in general over the Sony body. That's kind of one of the reasons why I shoot with Canon. I shoot a lot of my video handheld, so having a comfortable, semi-bulky body just is great for more stable shots. I'm not a team Canon versus team Sony. I like both companies. I think Sony has a better video camera, the Sony a7S III. By far, it just doesn't overheat and all that. I just like the Canon bodies more, so that's kind of why I shoot Canon. So yes, the Canon R6 body is amazing. I really like the fact that it has a dial at the top versus an LCD screen. I know that's personal preference, but it's just something that I really like because I can set the mode I'm shooting in before I even turn the camera on. So that's something that I always do. Because I'm a hybrid shooter, I shoot a lot of photos and videos, so I would switch the mode dial from M to the manual video mode a lot, so I can just turn the camera on and it's already in the mode I want to shoot in. I like the fact that the body is really durable and weather sealed. It feels like a tank. I'm not worried about it breaking. Even the LCD screen, which actually broke on one of my Sony cameras in the past, and I had to get that fixed, which was really annoying. So yeah, a very durable, reliable body just feels great. It's just one fewer thing to worry about when you're out shooting, so I really like that. The battery life is really good. It's not as good, I find, as the EOS R, but it's kind of using a similar battery, but it's using way more power. To power the sensor in the R6 while shooting video is a lot. That's kind of why it overheats a little bit. We'll get into the overheating later. Okay, now let's talk about the sensor. So it is a 20 megapixel sensor, which for me in photography is more than enough. And I don't really do wildlife photography, which would maybe require me to crop in a little bit. The 20 megapixel has been more than enough for obviously social media, but client work as well. No complaints on the quality at all. So it's really just sharp image. And for some reason, it looks sharper than the 30 megapixel sensor on the Canon EOS R. Because I used to shoot with the EOS R, and I made this point when I did the I think the first impressions or my first review of the Canon R6 about a year ago now, and it was that the image just looked sharper. I wasn't really sure why. I kind of did some research, and apparently it has to do with a filter that goes in front of the sensor that's just not on the R6. Okay, so next is the IBIS. Yes, the sensor is stabilized with IBIS, and that's awesome. I really do like the fact that it's stabilized. It's a good accompaniment to my style of shooting, which is handheld. I don't like using gimbals at all, and I rarely use them. So having the IBIS is amazing. The only downside is when you're shooting really wide, like 16, 17, or anything lower than that, really. Actually, almost anything lower than about 20 millimeters, you get this wobble effect in the corners, which is a little frustrating. But in those modes, I'll just turn the IBIS off because I'm kind of, strong enough to hold my camera where it doesn't shake too much, so there's that. But for the most part, the IBIS is amazing because when I'm using my 24 art lens or anything further than that, it is super stable. Shooting handheld looks like you're shooting with a tripod. It also obviously helps a lot with long exposure photography. I can take 4-second shutter shots and it just looks super crisp, and I would have never been able to do that with almost any other sensor I've had. And I've used the GH5 and some of the really, the kings of IBIS. So that's something that helps a lot, especially in low light. So yeah, now in terms of video, 4K, 10-bit, crazy good autofocus in that mode. That's what I'm shooting on right now. It also has 4K 60. That's my favorite mode to shoot in. Anything that I need to do in slow motion, but I want to keep a certain quality, 4K 60 is perfect. It still is 10-bit, and it still is the full frame, which is awesome. That said, the R6 is not completely full frame. I think it has a 1.07 crop, but it's not super noticeable. And yes, the autofocus is very fast, very reliable. I don't know if you can tell in this video. I'm shooting on the Sigma Art 24 1.4, and that's a difficult lens to use with autofocus because the depth of field is very shallow. I'm shooting at 1.4 right now, and it doesn't seem to have any issues. So yeah, this is just a really good all-around camera. It's way cheaper than the R5, which is why I got it, and it ticks all the boxes that I need. I think if someone were to go to the R5 is because they really need the 45 megapixel sensor, because from a video standpoint, the 4K 24 frames per second on the R6 is actually a little bit sharper than that on the R5, but the only video spec that the R5 has over the R6 would be the 4K 120 and I guess also the 8K, but I don't know anyone who uses the 8K in that camera. The 4K 120 though is appealing. I could see that being a reason why I would upgrade. But as of right now, 4K 60 is more than enough. In low light, the R6 seems to be amazing. The photos and the videos just look awesome. I think this is also an advantage that the R6 has over the R5 because it's a smaller megapixel sensor, which means that the pixels are actually larger, which means they accept more light, so the images are just better in low light, which is helpful for me because I do like shooting a lot at nighttime. Now let's talk about the problems. One problem, as I mentioned before, the IBIS. The wobbling is frustrating, especially when I'm shooting at 16mm. When I'm vlogging, I turn it off, but for some client shoots, I do want the IBIS to be there to help me a bit with the stabilization, because if you're able to shoot handheld with some of the techniques I talk about in one of my past videos, you can avoid some of that wobble, and when you do, it is super smooth. It looks like you're flying the camera on a DJI Ronin, and that's really awesome. So main problem I have is the IBIS. Second problem I have is the fact that there are no custom video modes. I can't put my camera in custom 1, custom 2, custom 3 and have those be video modes. Those are only for photography. I learned that when I just got the camera and I didn't really see anyone talk about it, so that was kind of frustrating. But yeah, it's just something that I deal with now. I'm kind of just used to changing my settings manually, but yeah, that's something that I wish they implemented in a firmware. The next thing is the fact that the C-Log 3 requires an ISO of 800, or that's the ISO that maximizes the dynamic range. Not a huge issue. I do miss the fact that C-Log 2 or C-Log, the one that the R6 previously only had, was an ISO of 400. That would give you the best dynamic range. 800 is quite bright, so ND filters, higher shutter speeds, just things I don't really like to have to use. Yeah, I'm not really using ND filters much anymore. I don't know, I don't like the color cast, even with more expensive ND filters. It's just a change in color and the auto exposure kind of gets messed up. I'm strictly talking for vlogging here. If I were doing a client shoot, I wouldn't have auto ISO or any of that, so I would use an ND filter, but for vlogging or for quick videos, it's kind of annoying. Now, I do want to talk about something that some people have had an issue with, but I haven't, and that's the overheating. This camera has never overheated, and I shot plenty of client videos, from music videos to corporate videos to, you know, promotions for social media. I think it's just my style of shooting is not something that would test the overheating of this camera. I've had it flicker once when I was shooting a music video, take after take after take, but it never overheated. Although the timer went down to like 2 minutes, it just never overheated. So I don't know, I've never had that issue. It's never been something that bothered me. I know people have that issue, I guess, if you have like podcast style where you're shooting like an hour straight, but I never do that, and so I've never really had that issue. That's pretty much it for this video, guys. Hopefully it was helpful to you. If you guys want to see more videos about the Canon R6, definitely check my channel. I've talked about the settings I use, low light tests, a bunch of things that could help you make decision if you want to purchase it or not. A link will be in the description if you want to purchase it through Amazon at a really good price, so there's that. And yeah, so hopefully this video helped you out, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.